Hi guys, welcome back to the Charlotte Ade channel where I help you fulfill your potentials and get you closer to your dream job. Now this video is the second part of the first video we started last weekend where we were talking about interviews and hacking interviews like a pro. And today is a continuation of last week's video. But today we'll be actually addressing questions. And again, I love interviews. So today I'll just be giving you a little scope on certain questions that will definitely come up and examples of those types of questions. And then at the second part of this video, I'll be reserving questions for what you should be asking your interviewers. Those are the questions that are key to asking your interviewers, as well as you should always go to an interview with questions. Now, if you started this video and you haven't watched the first one, it might not really add up. It probably would, but I would just suggest that you watch the first one, just so that it's wholesome and then it makes perfect sense to you. So let's dive in. What are the frequently questions? What are questions that are commonly asked by interviewers, actually? I think that's a better way to rephrase it. What are questions that are commonly asked as an interview? The first one, and we discussed this last week, is please tell me about yourself and why you're interested in this role. As we said last week, your introduction has to be on point. Most interviewers have the first impression bias, so you have to kill it with your introduction. If you want to know how to kill it, last week when I watched the video. But it's very, very important that you come into an interview prepared to be able to talk about yourself and in a concise, articulate way that is quite impactful, especially in regards to the role you're applying for. So it's very, very important. The second question I have here is please tell me why you're interested in working here. This question will always come up because everyone will want to understand why you applied to their company and what is it that caught your attention, why you align with the role, why you align with the organization. No employer wants to hire someone that just seems not interested or not invested in what they do. Again, if you remember, one thing that we've been carrying across this whole series is you having the mindset of a recruiter or an employer. If you have a company, you want to hire someone who is interested in working there. So this question would usually come up. You always have to have your storyboard ready. If you don't know what I'm talking about in terms of a storyboard, that's why you need to watch the first video. I'm talking about the breakdown of what you should basically be researching and prepping for in terms of these questions. Now, the next one is what are your strengths and areas of improvement? Not many people ask this question anymore, but at the same time, still a very, very popular question. And the reason why people ask this question is because they want to see if you're self-aware. And I will say that you have to be strategic about answering this question because you can't just say what your general strengths are. Like, one of my strengths is that I'm able to see potentials in people and help them facilitate that. If I was applying for a position that wasn't related to talent, I would probably not use that strength, even though it's quite cross-functional in terms of using that strength, but I wouldn't use that. You have to be strategic about answering what your strengths are because you want to sort of align those strengths or the strengths that you have with the position and the role. So for instance, let's use a HR professional. And human resources or people management, as what people call it now, people transformation, whatever you call it in your organization, key strengths that are required is people skills. So you have to find a way to identify strengths that align with people's skills. Two, confidentiality. Three, one thing that people look out for now when it comes to HR is being strategic minded. You have to pick things that the organization is looking for. So I would say don't just say what your strengths are. You have to link it back to the position and what they're looking for. That is how you're going to make more of an impact when you're answering the question. Now the second part is what are your areas of improvement? People always say things like, I pay so much attention to detail and to the point where it can be annoying for my team members. No, no. Or I'm so organized. Oh, this one is so popular. I'm so organized. So, anytime, I'm trying to organize something, it can be time, it can take a lot of my time. Yeah, I think those are things that the internet told us to do 10 years ago. We've moved to a season of authenticity where you can actually say areas of improvement that you have noticed through the journey and how it has actually improved. The key thing is talking about that area of improvement, but what you're doing to actually, improve that area. So it's important to think about that. For instance, I would say one of the areas of improvement that I have is speaking very fast. And in the past, like I can rap, not I don't know how to rap, but I'm saying when I'm speaking, sometimes it can be hard to follow what I'm saying because I can speak very fast. I really try to be intentional about slowing myself down, for candidates. Now, because my role is around speaking, this area of improvement is important because I speak a lot to candidates. So it's relevant for my position. I wouldn't pick an area of improvement or I sleep too much, something that is random. No, you have to pick something that is relevant to your role and what you're doing to improve on it. So in terms of improvement, I would say like I practice speaking and I practice, interviewing candidates with the mirror on myself, 5 minutes every day. I actually do it every day. So it helps me in terms of slowing myself down and actually having a pace. Right now, you would notice that now I'm intentionally slowing myself down as I'm speaking because I'm actually talking about an area of improvement. But yeah, you get the gist. Tell me about a time you've worked in a team to complete a project. A question around teamwork would always come up because a lot of times we have remote roles or cross-geographical roles, global teams, remote teams. Teamwork questions will always come up, so you always have to think about how you work in a team. Now, when it comes to working in a team, and a question around working in a team is not enough to say, yes, I have worked in a team, but what do you do? What is your role within a team? You would find that there are different roles people play when it comes to teams. There's someone who takes the leadership role. There's someone who is more of the resourceful person. If anyone needs anything, that's the guy. I am that person. I am a resourceful person. If you need anything within the team, ask me. I'm the go-to person. 3, there are organizers within the team. I have someone in my team. She's fantastic at organizing stuff. If we need something to get done, she starts organizing things. And there are people who are just very meticulous, who are the reviewers in the team to ensure that nothing is left unturned. If you are that person, every review goes through you because you have attention to detail. So you have to understand what your role within a team is. And then there are people that are just there for bringing people together. And it's actually important to have people who bring the team together and who actually, switch up the vibe. But you wouldn't use that in an interview, but switch up the environment in that team. So that's very important. So think about what your role is when it comes to teams. The next question is what do you enjoy about your role and what don't you enjoy about your role? Now this is a smart question because most times recruiters are trying to find that the things that you enjoy is what they're looking for within a team. So again, you have to be strategic about answering the question. You're not just saying, what I enjoyed. I enjoy the fact that, we have socials every Friday. My boss gave me plenty of responsibilities. You can't just answer the question. You have to think about the mind of the recruiter or the mind of the hiring manager is thinking through what potentially are they looking for in this person. So you have to sort of think about the things that you enjoy that the interviewer is actually looking for. For instance, like I enjoy building our programs and actually doing, organizing a program out for people. I also enjoy, as much as I enjoy recruitment, I enjoy doing other projects within, the HR team. So those are things that I enjoy in my role. So you have to relate that. And if you think about it, a lot of recruiters are looking for people who process driven and can pull out a design a program end to end. They're also looking for people who are not just recruiters but can actually do other responsibilities with the team. So you have to think about the mind of the hiring manager and recruiter when you're answering questions. The next one is, what are your long-term plans for your career, or what are your 5-year goals, 5-year plan, 5-year goals, etc. I heard people say, hopefully by then I'll be, especially junior hires, say, oh, by then I'll be a director, manager. That's not necessarily what they're trying to ask you the question. Or people who are already senior hires and they're asking you, what are you looking for in your 5-year plan and or long-term career goals, and you say you want to start a business, then why are you here? Why are you here? Like, literally, why are you here? Like, I've spoken to many senior hires or executive hires, and they're telling me in an interview that basically want to leave. In fact, then I'm not motivated to keep you or even keep you in the process, because you're going to leave up and leave in a year. Again, I'm not against job hopping. If that's what you want to do, fine, that's absolutely fine. But for organizations that are actually looking for stickiness and like long-term fitness, you would most likely not get the job if you're answering it that way. So I would say that you have to, again, think about your career goals in a way that aligns with what an organization is probably looking for in terms of stickiness. So instead of saying, in 5 years I want to be a manager, even if that's your goal, you don't necessarily have to say it in an interview. Think more towards being a subject matter expert, increasing your knowledge, being more skilled at the role, sharing knowledge with others, and being, someone who transfers knowledge to other people, process improvements, expansion. Think about things like that, or even geographical expansion, cutting across to a different team, internal mobility, things like that are things you should be thinking around, because if you're an employer, that's what you do. So those are things you should think about. The next question is, tell me about a challenge you faced and how you overcame it. A very wise question too. I'm not necessarily looking for a life story here as a recruiter. Yes, you could use a life story, but be strategic about it. It's always useful to talk about a challenge within the work setting or within the role that you're actually applying for, because it's quite helpful, to see how you would navigate a problem if you were in that team or in their organization as well. So it's helpful to use a technical challenge and what you did about it, and how you overcame and what you did differently. And sometimes I think adding lessons learned and what you would do differently next time is very, very useful. So that's what I'll say. The next question I have here is, what motivates you? I've heard different types of answers to this question. One candidate said money. Now, to be fair, we are all motivated by money, right? But I don't expect you to come into the interview and just be like, money. Okay. But there has to be something more to you than just money, and that is what they're looking for. So if you're someone who is motivated by, teamwork, collaboration, motivated by seeing results happen, those are things that they're looking out for, or problem solving. Someone like me, there's nothing that makes me happier than knowing that I've helped someone closer to their dreams. Either it being a job offer, like a placement, seeing someone, get a job within the organization that I work, or somewhere else, and I supported them through that process. That gives me a lot of joy. That motivates me. Seeing people improve, even through this series, and getting feedback that, oh, Charlotte, that was really helpful. I was able to feel more confident, in the next interview because, of these videos you put out. That motivates me. So being able to spin those motivations that are non-monetary for the position, and to make the manager feel like this is someone I can motivate within my team based on the results and things we're looking for, is what they're looking for. The next question is, what do you do? What do you enjoy doing outside of work? Please don't say things like smoking weed or like just this. Let's keep it professional. I've heard, you're shocked, I've heard all sorts of answers. You know, I think people, again, I mentioned something last week. Hiring managers and people want to they want to feel like they can work with you and they can relate to you. And when you're discussing what you do outside of work, please keep it professional. You know, you can talk about the fact that you like spending time with your family, you like traveling, a lot of people like traveling, and then you can start a conversation in that interview around places you've traveled. Like, where have you been? This was my last trip. This is what I learned about their culture. I enjoy learning about different cultures. Then you begin to link it to being someone who works with different types of people, being able to navigate different scenarios. You can always use those questions to link back to what the hiring manager is looking for. So that is something that I would say. The last question is, do you have any questions for me? Which is the interviewer asking if you have any questions for them. In the last episode, we talked about that, and I'll be talking about that now. In terms of questions you should ask, please always have questions prepared for the interviewer. It always comes across as, you know, lack of motivation, curiosity. It doesn't really show a lot of critical thinking when you don't have questions prepped for an interviewer. Great, so let's move to the next section, which is questions you should ask at the end of your interview. I only have 5 questions here, but obviously online there are definitely much more. The first one is, can you tell me more about your team structure and how people within your team collaborate? This question shows that you're interested in the team specifically, how they're organized, how they work together, and it shows the hiring manager that you've already started seeing yourself within their team, and that's something that, you know, anyone would want. Again, you're putting yourself in the mind of the recruiter, right? The second one is, what has kept you in the company and why do you enjoy working at X company? One, you want to go a bit personal into their journey and what has motivated them there. You want to see if, you know, some of the things that motivated them there would keep you. You also have to remember you're also interviewing this company and you also want to see if this organization is right for you. So what are the motivations that they have? Do they align with yours? So it's a good question to ask at the end. 3, a good question to ask is, how is knowledge transfer prioritized within this organization? And what does training look like to set someone up for success in this organization? So obviously, as someone coming new into the organization, you want to be set up for success. Even though you have done this role, maybe you're experienced, you're a senior hire, you've done this role many times, there are certain things and things that has to be prepared for you during your onboarding and during your training and knowledge transfer that will set you up for success. No matter how experienced you are, if your onboarding is crap, you might not be successful within that organization because you spend a lot of your time trying to find information, trying to get knowledge, trying to understand how things are done, trying to get how they do things within that organization, and it's a waste of time for everybody. So again, you're interviewing this organization and you want to see that it's something that they've thought about and they are also intentional about your success. The next question I have is, what are upcoming initiatives or plans or strategies about the business you're excited about? You want to make the hiring manager see that you're thoughtful about the long-term vision of the organization, long-term strategy of the organization, and that you see yourself already positioned to solve for. And that's something that any hiring manager or recruiter would want to see, or any employer. In fact, if you're a business owner, you would want to see that in employees. So, you know, talking about those initiatives and, you know, get in deeper in conversations. You know, why is this something that is important within the organization? Is this something that interests you? Talk about how this strategy or this initiative or this goal interests you, and something that maybe you researched recently or got recently excited about. The last question I have is, how have you handled failure or mistakes by a team member in the team? Or even personally in their own journey within the organizations, how have they handled failure or mistakes, because it happens, right? So you want to see how they go about doing it, and you make the interviewer feel like, okay, you're a realistic person, and these things happen, but you're also thinking about how they would handle you. You're also interviewing them, and you want to see how they've handled mistakes in the past, and if it's something that you can do. And if they didn't ask you the question in the interview, how you've handled mistakes, you can sort of chip it in here to be wise. And they would ask you similarly, you can ask them similarly rather, how they have rewarded success in their team. So if there have been successes, which there's always success, how have they rewarded it? Is it through money? Is it through praise, or just a message? What do they do? How do they handle success in the organization? And these are the questions for today. I hope you found them helpful. I'm sure that some of you already know this question, but if you haven't, hope you've learned something new. And if you've gotten to the end of this video, a warm welcome and thank you. Thank you for spending time with me today. If you're in the journey of finding a job, I'm your recruiter sister here to help you through the journey. I've been there, I understand. And in the next series, we'll be talking about a couple of things I think would interest you as well. So stick around. Thank you again. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, keep your comments. If you found anything helpful at all, please comment. If you have any questions, please leave below. If you want to reach out to me, check the description box for my email, or you can drop your emails so I can share some resources with you. So in the next episode, we'll be discussing where to find the jobs, whether it's part-time, full-time, remote. So stick around and I'll see you next weekend. Thank you.